Welcome to Beginning with Moses, Discovering Jesus in the Bible. I'm Pastor Gary Schulte. Welcome to episode 73 of Beginning with Moses, where we jump with both feet into Judges chapter 1. Judges 1 reads like a victory report. Cities fall, kings are captured, territory is taken. At first glance, it feels like the conquest is continuing exactly as it should. But if you slow down, the narrator keeps quietly interrupting the celebration, as if he's nudging you. Do you see it yet? Because something is wrong beneath the surface. A phrase begins to repeat like a drum beat. They did not drive out the inhabitants. That line is not background detail. It is the interpretive key to the entire chapter, and really the entire book. Each repetition is meant to build pressure, like a crack widening in a foundation. Israel's issue is not total failure. It is partial obedience. They win battles, they gain ground, they look successful. But partial obedience is not a lesser form of obedience. It is disobedience that hasn't shown its consequences yet. The book opens after the death of Joshua. That signals more than leadership change. It signals a shift in how Israel must live. They can no longer rely on the memory of past victories. They must now trust Yahweh directly in the present. Israel asked, "Who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites?" This is a moment of faith. They seek Yahweh rather than assuming their own strategy, and his answer sets the theological trajectory. Judah is not just first in line militarily. Judah is first in the unfolding plan of redemption. From Judah will come David. From Judah will come Christ. Even as things begin to unravel, Yahweh is already steering history toward salvation. Judah joins with Simeon, and they succeed. At Bezek, thousands fall. The conquest continues with strength. This is important. God is still giving victory. The issue is not whether God is faithful. The issue is whether his people will remain faithful after the victory. They capture King Adoni-Bezek and cut off his thumbs and big toes. It's brutal, but calculated. It permanently removes his ability to wage war or rule effectively. In the ancient world, this was a way of declaring, "Your dominion is finished." Then the pagan king says, "As I have done, so God has repaid me." And suddenly he interprets his own downfall through the lens of divine justice.
We ask Yahweh who will rise, no more leaning on old victories' eyes. Step by step we move in faith, not by memory, but what he says. Judah goes where he commands, promise moving through the land. Canaan's conquest continues on, from dawn to dusk, from fight to song. Kings fall down, their power ends, but deeper lines are drawing in. Canaan's conquest continues still, by Yahweh's word, not human will. Adoni-Bezek brought to ground, justice echoes all around. Southward march through dust and flame, Jerusalem bears his name. Debir falls, the promise grows, through Caleb's line the river flows. Achsah asks and springs arise, life where barren land once lies. But not all cities bow the knee, some remain and we will see.
This king understands something critical. Yahweh is not arbitrary. There's moral order to the world. What you do has consequences. And here's the tension. The pagan sees it clearly, while Israel's about to live as if that truth does not apply to them. What's striking here is that this man has no covenant relationship with Yahweh, no Torah, no prophets, and yet he recognizes what has happened to him is not random. He doesn't chalk it up to bad luck or military miscalculation. He sees judgment, and that exposes something uncomfortable. General revelation is enough to recognize justice, but Israel, who has special revelation, will soon live as if justice doesn't apply to them. Adoni-Bezek had humiliated 70 kings. Now he experiences the same humiliation. This is not random cruelty. It is a reflection of justice. And it reminds us, Yahweh governs history, even through the downfall of kings who do not know him. Judah presses on, Jerusalem, Hebron, the Negev. The victories continue. The land is being taken. But the narrator is not measuring success by territory gained. He is measuring it by obedience fulfilled. Then the narrative slows down. Caleb offers his daughter Achsah to whoever captures Debir. Othniel succeeds. This is not just a side story. It introduces Othniel, the first judge Yahweh will raise up. Achsah asks for springs of water, because land without water cannot sustain life. Her request shows discernment. She understands that a gift is only as valuable as its ability to produce life. Caleb gives her both upper and lower springs. There's wisdom here, provision, and a recognition of what is truly needed. Even in a chapter trending toward compromise, there are still moments of faithfulness. Then comes the shift. Judah cannot drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they have iron chariots. And now we see the first real fracture. These chariots represent technological superiority. But the issue is not the strength of the enemy. It is the shrinking of Israel's trust. They begin to see obstacles as determinative rather than Yahweh's word. Nothing about Yahweh has changed. What has changed is Israel's evaluation of reality. They now interpret the situation through fear instead of promise. This is where faith and sight collide. Faith says, Yahweh has spoken, so the outcome is certain. Sight says, look at those chariots. This doesn't seem realistic. And once sight becomes the dominant lens, obedience starts getting negotiated. Not rejected outright, just adjusted, softened, delayed. This is where obedience begins to unravel. We would obey, but this is so difficult. But the conditions aren't ideal. That word "but" becomes the doorway through which compromise enters. Then the pattern spreads. Benjamin doesn't drive them out. Manasseh does not. Ephraim does not. What began as hesitation becomes normalization. Zebulun, no. Asher, no. Naphtali, no. This repetition is intentional. It's meant to feel exhausting because compromise is spreading everywhere. Israel stops removing the Canaanites and begins living among them. In some cases, they even exploit them for labor. What looks like efficiency becomes spiritual vulnerability. Because when the people remain, their gods remain. And their gods come with practices, values, and assumptions that begin reshaping Israel from within. Idolatry doesn't usually begin with outright rejection of Yahweh. It begins with coexistence, then curiosity, then adaptation, then eventual replacement. That is the slow, almost invisible drift. At first, Israel doesn't bow down to these gods. They just live near the people who do. Then they tolerate the altars. Then they participate in the cultural rhythms, festivals, practices, shared life. And before long, what was once unthinkable becomes normal. That's how covenant identity erodes, not all at once, but one accommodation at a time. The text highlights hills and valleys. Israel succeeds in the hills, but struggles in the plains where the chariots dominate. That contrast is intentional. They obey when obedience feels manageable. They hesitate when obedience requires deeper trust. Faith weakens precisely at the point where it is most needed. Then comes a critical turning point. The Amorites pushed the tribe of Dan into the hill country. Dan was supposed to drive them out. Instead, Dan is driven back. This is the turning point from compromise to consequence. Up to this point, Israel has been leaving enemies in place. Now those enemies are actively reshaping Israel's boundaries. What was tolerated is now exerting control. And that is always how sin works. It never remains static. This is no longer incomplete obedience. This is the beginning of defeat. What you tolerate does not remain neutral. It grows, it resists, it pushes back. Sin is never content to share space. It seeks to take over. The Kenites appear, outsiders living among Judah, yet faithful to Yahweh. This reminds us that belonging to God's people has always been about faith, not merely lineage. Judges 1 is not about failed battles. It's about chosen compromise. Small decisions that seem reasonable plant seeds that will grow into national disaster. This chapter sets the stage: sin, oppression, crying out, deliverance. And then the cycle repeats, because the root problem is never fully addressed. Israel doesn't just need better leadership. They need a king who will not fail and a heart that will not drift. And this is where Judges quietly pushes us forward, because every judge in this book will be partial, flawed, and inconsistent. They deliver, but only temporarily. They lead, but imperfectly. They obey, but never completely. Where is the deliverer who doesn't fail? From Judah will come the answer: Jesus Christ, the true judge and king. He doesn't partially obey. He fulfills the will of the Father completely. He doesn't tolerate sin. He conquers it fully. And he doesn't just push back enemies. He defeats sin, death, and the devil at the root. What Israel could not do in the land, Christ does in the human heart. Judges 1 shows how you can win early battles and still lose the war, not through one dramatic rebellion, but through small compromises that seem harmless, even wise. And yet even here, Yahweh is still faithful. In episode 74, we'll jump into Judges 2 and see how this evil cycle starts to solidify and define the entire 300-plus years of the Judges. See you there. God bless.
The banners rose in Judah's wind. The battles looked like victories again. Kings brought low and cities burned. The conquest seemed to turn the world. But underneath the trumpet sound, a fracture quietly spread around. A whispered compromise concealed behind the victories on the field.
They did not drive them out.
Again, again, again.
Like cracks beneath the temple stones, like rust
beneath the skin.
Geography is theology.
The hills revealed their faith.
They trusted God where trust was easy.
Then fear the iron plains.
Every valley showed the limits
of the promises they claimed.
because the land outside reflected
the war inside their heart. Judah climbed where footing held, but chariots rolled through lower fields. And suddenly the promise slowed beneath the weight of iron wheels. Nothing changed in Yahweh's power, nothing weakened in His word, but fear became the lens they used to reinterpret what they heard.
we would obey, but
That single poison phrase can turn a nation from the promise, one compromise away.
geography is theology.
The map exposed the soul,
The mountain sang of confidence.
the valley showed control.
What they tolerated slowly
Began reshaping who they were.
because the land outside reflected
The gods they let remain. The pagan king saw justice clearer
than covenant hearts growing dull. 70 kings beneath his table, now he tasted what he'd done. And Dan was driven to the hills, the boundaries pushed backward. What Israel refused to kill returned to become their master. Sin never stays contained, it spreads like roots beneath the floorboards, quiet, patient, until the whole house bends. They lived among the altars, then prayed beside them, then married into them, then bowed before them. That's how kingdoms collapse, not all at once. Accommodation by accommodation. Geography is theology. Every border preached a truth. The places where they feared the most revealed where faith grew weak. But from the tribe of Judah came a king who would not drift. He conquered deeper territory, the human heart itself.